have options. So, yeah, yes.
So we're preparing for our discussion on discipleship. So hope you guys can join us and feel free to contribute to the conversation. I'm going to share this with some folks and we'll get started in about 10 minutes. So thank you for chiming in with your thoughts and ideas on discipleship.
She has a set, Corbin has a set, Kira kind of has.
So we're live on Facebook, on YouTube. So.
Right now?
Yep.
Okay.
Say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Oh. Wait, mine or hers?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. If you need more, just let me know.
Okay.
She loves her little Rooster. Oh, no, that's her little one. We launched that one out.
So do you cook them?
We will at some point.
I got one you can cook.
You raise chickens too?
Yes, ma'am. I've raised chickens and ducks and stuff for working on 20 years now.
That boy loves his.
I love it.
That's Corbin's chickens.
I mean, I grew up with
So
them.
he's
My
got-
dad,
that's
my
his
mom
girl.
raised them too.
And that's his boy.
That's so pretty.
Yeah, these ones are silkies, so they're a little different, but that's his rooster.
I like silkies because they got 6 toes.
Yeah. Oh, well, 5 toes.
Well, yeah.
It's 5 toes, yeah, they have an extra toe. They got big old feet. Yeah, usually chickens only have 4 toes, and silkies have 5.
I'm learning something today.
Yeah. So, and Corbin's chicken is what's called a naked neck, so he doesn't have feathers on most of his neck.
What?
They're
So it's called a
ugly.
naked neck chicken. Corbin loves.
They look like exactly what you would think they look like, naked necks. They're ugly.
Corbin loves, that's Fanta, and his girl is Soda. And
So how
then,
many chickens do you have?
too many. I probably have about 30.
Oh my gosh. Do you sell them?
No. Not yet. I probably will be. Trina's gonna take a few.
Wow.
And then we have ducks and we have quail. We do eat our quail at this point, Jared.
Oh, they're so tasty.
I've got 11
Yeah, it's one taste.
in the whole pan right
Oh,
now.
wait, we're live right now, right?
Yep.
Oh, whoopsie. My farm raised them. We hatched them out.
I've wanted one so bad for so long.
I think they're selling some.
For those of you who are waiting for us to start, we're going to do a discussion on discipleship with our church. So thanks for tuning in. And if you've got comments or thoughts about discipleship, feel free to message us. I won't be able to get back to you immediately, but we'll respond to your comments later on. Don't have to stop talking.
Sorry.
Once I realized that we're talking about birds and eating them and stuff.
Yeah, so
Sorry, YouTube. It's a yellow one.
What y'all think about this morning's service?
Oh my gosh, if you don't
Yeah.
stop.
Oh, God.
I'm just playing.
I wish this never ended.
It was a great service. The Lord was really moving. So.
it was,
Is it like in the shade or is it that bright?
no, he was just under the light.
Because my absolute favorite breed is the German.
Something's happening. Something's happening.
What you said?
I don't know.
Amen.
when it-
Amen.
so the first one was
If you didn't get to watch our service this morning, tune in at newvisionc.com, and you can watch us on YouTube, or you can go to our website and catch up on what the Lord is doing in and through our church.
That was the comparison we got at the same time.
Yeah, it might be I don't know, some kind of giant breed.
I'm worried that it's gonna be like some gigantic rooster and stand up to Corbin's, like up to his chest. He's massive. There's a lot. He should be on it. And it was on his desk and I'm not sure they got everything out.
We've got a few minutes, so let me see who's on here.
Hello.
Who's there? Let me see. I can't take all my glasses. All right. Sydney, good to see you. Hey there. Mr. Selena, how's it going? Good to see you guys. Hi. Thanks for tuning in. We are going to discuss discipleship today with our church, and we're looking to employ some new and different things. So you guys get to be part of that conversation because some of our church members can't be here, and they wanted to make sure that we were broadcasting for them. So if you have some comments or thoughts about discipleship, please, hey, Magical Whisk Cooking, I am noticing you now. So good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. So about another couple minutes and we'll get started with our discussion. Hi, Sandra, good to see you. Sierra, good to see you. Eggs, what's up with the eggs? They were talking about eggs earlier. They have all kinds of eggs, all kinds of animals with eggs. Talking about quail eggs, chicken eggs, duck eggs.
I think that's about it.
We got a bunch of eggheads.
Yeah.
So while we're waiting, if you're not part of our church, what does your church do with discipleship? How do you guys handle discipleship? What kind of things do you guys do to help disciple your church members? Yes, Easter eggs. That's true, Easter eggs.
He was just hanging out.
That's
You
cool.
never know.
That's cool. So where's everybody located right now? Why don't you put in the chat where you're viewing this from? Where are you watching? With all this talking about eggs, you might be in your kitchen. So, hey Raphael, good to see you. Irvine, California. What are you doing way out there? Thanks for watching. You know what that is? Did you live near there?
No.
Oh, I got somebody watching from Washington. Nice. Yes, our mission is to make disciples who will make disciples of all nations. All right, we're about to get started, so I'm going to turn you back to the screen. All right, well, good evening, y'all. Thank y'all for being here. I want to get started and fix my phone because it tilted me.
Oh, yep, you're a little sideways.
Here, I got you. Go sit down.
Yeah.
I'll straighten it out.
Well, we're going to pray, and then we'll get started. God, thank you for today and this time together, and Lord, as we embark on an important discussion, God, we pray that you would lead and guide and direct us. Help us as we, Lord, seek to work with you in accomplishing your mission for your church. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Over the last several weeks, we've been in a discussion about discipleship and what does that look like at our church, but this is not a new conversation. It's been an ongoing conversation for many years. Our vision statement for New Vision is to be disciples who will make disciples of all nations. And so tonight, I appreciate you guys being here so that we can continue that discussion on how we can do that maybe more specifically and effectively at and through our church. And so our agenda tonight is basically, I want to use this acronym COME, because Jesus said, come and follow me, right? And so as we've come together tonight, we want to talk about communicating what the vision is and how we can accomplish that. We want to talk about orchestrating the material for that to happen. So what are we going to do? How are we going to do that? Then we want to talk about motivating people
and how we can be part of encouraging others to become those disciples. And then finally, enculturating that into our everyday lives. That will happen primarily through our conversations and things at the church, but we want to make sure that we're using the same kind of concepts and ideas and even language at the church to help people understand what it is that we're talking about, so that we're not using unfamiliar terms, but that we're all using the same kind of language to help people understand what our mission is and why we're doing what we're doing. So communicate the vision, orchestrate the material, motivate the people, and then enculturate new vision. That's what I hope to accomplish tonight, and get your feedback on how we can do these kind of things effectively. So, starting out, communicating the vision. I just said what our vision for New Vision is to be disciples who will make disciples, but we really are aspiring to be a church of disciple-making disciples, okay? So, and the thing about that, disciple-making disciples, is it's an active process. That we are not just doing this just once. We want this to be an ongoing thing that happens throughout the life of the church, right? This is what God's intention was for the church. When Jesus left and he gave the mandate to the church, to his disciples, he said, go and make disciples. And he meant that to be continually, not just once, but this is the life of the church. That the church continues to grow when there's a strong foundation. Of course, we know that Jesus is the foundation. But it's important for us to make sure that we're communicating these truths about Jesus to the next generation and equipping them so that they can do that to the next generation. So when we're talking about communicating this vision, we want to make sure that people understand this is what we're trying to do. This is why we do what we do at the church. That it is part of our DNA, okay? That this is who we are as a church. Jesus actually told his disciples when he was calling some of them, right? He didn't say this to all of them, but his intention was the same with all of them. You all know this passage in Matthew 4:19, that when Jesus called his disciples, what did he say?
Go ye into all the world.
I'm sorry?
Go ye into
No, Matthew 4:19. No.
Matthew 4,
Follow me.
19.
He said, follow me in what?
I will make you fishers.
Okay? He said, yeah, I will make you fishers of men. The idea here is Jesus is saying, you're not yet a fisher of men, but I'm going to make you one. And so the idea for us is that everybody's not a disciple yet, but we're going to help people become that. Jesus said, you're not yet a fisher of men, but I'm going to help you become a fisher of men. I will make you that. And Jesus is making us his disciples, and he's going to use us to help make other disciples. Okay? So the idea that we're embracing here is to say that we want to be disciples, but we also, in being disciples, are going to be making other disciples. Because it's incumbent on us who are disciples to make other disciples. That if we say that that's what we are, a disciple, well, then we should be making disciples. If we are truly disciples of Jesus, then we're always going to be looking for other people to invest in. We're always going to be looking for other people that we can help along the way. Sometimes that's going to be done formally. Sometimes it's going to be done informally. We heard, and I've said this, you heard this last couple weeks ago, more is caught than taught. Sometimes it's just sharing space with people, right? And the more you hang out with people, the more they're going to become like you, and you're going to become like them. But it is incumbent on us who are actively seeking to follow Jesus, that we might have to initiate that relationship with some others. We may have to say, hey, would you like to grow? You'd like to grow a little bit more in your relationship with Christ? Would you like to know more about Christ? So communicating that to other people is going to be very important for us, that we have to actively be talking about this more than just this time of the year. This has to be like a continual conversation that's happening in and throughout the church on Sundays, on Wednesdays, at our Bible studies, family groups, at our different meetings, that we're always talking about being disciples and making disciples. So let me stop there with communicate the vision. vision. How do you feel like we can do that a little bit better? Communicating the vision.
Well, one way is like you said, by, talking about it more even in our studies. It doesn't mean that you have to teach on it every time, but it can be incorporated in almost everything that we teach. So I think that's a good tool to do that, and so it's always forefront of someone's mind, and that's what we're all about.
Okay.
Smaller gatherings.
Yeah, at all the gatherings, yeah. Kurt?
I think that one of the things that we have to keep in mind, especially since we're really getting this started, is that we have to identify ourselves as being disciples. Because you have to be a disciple
Yep.
to teach or make disciples. So one of the things that was talked about earlier today was the fact that a lot of us at New Vision are truly Christians, but we're looking to become disciples. And one of the reasons that people don't do it or shy away from it is because they don't feel that they know enough. And we have to communicate that you don't have to have all the answers. You just got to know God and talk about that.
Yeah, and thank you for making that point, because here's one of the things when we talk about, and we'll get to this with the next point, orchestrating material, is that everybody's not going to be able to do everything that another person might be able to do. Some people got more time than other people, but that doesn't mean that people who are busy don't want to be discipled. It just means that discipleship may have to look different. But what we've got to talk about is that, and we want to encourage people that it's not about you knowing, X number of verses or how to do this or that. It's about your lifestyle. And we'll get into that with discipling, and depending on how it is or who it is you're discipling, we'll be talking about character, we'll be talking about conduct, we'll be talking about what is the fruit of the Spirit, all these kind of things which can take place in a lot of different formats. Doesn't have to just be through a booklet. But these ideas of characteristics of integrity and excellence and all these kind of things are things that can be done through a conversation as well as through a classroom. And I think that both of those are important. Classrooms and conversations are important. And I think that as much as we can, and I'll lay this out more specifically in a few minutes, but with as much as we can with certain classes, I think that would be great. But I know that it would be foolish for me to think that every person in our church is going to go through a class. It's just not going to happen. But I think that there are certain people who can go through those classes, and then in and through that, they'll be able to have other conversations with people who can't necessarily go through the class, but they're going to be in the classroom of life. And it's like, I know that I have a lot more meaningful conversations with people in the car driving with me than I do sometimes sitting in a discipleship class. And so it's us who are being discipled, right? Understanding that part of me discipling someone else is taking advantage of every opportunity. Not just waiting for my next class to say something, right? It's taking advantage of every opportunity we have to invest in other people. But I do agree that we have to be talking about it more. We have to be encouraging people more. And people need to know where to go. And right now, we haven't, for a long time, we have not had like a specific direction for people to go. And some of that's because when we did have that, nobody was coming. And so it's, a lot of times it feels like a waste of time for me. If I'm offering something and nobody's coming, or the same people are showing up who have already heard some of this stuff before, then it's like, well, I should be using my time maybe in other ways. And so this will help us with kind of seeing where people are, and you can kind of gauge yourself on what either class you need or what kind of discipleship it is that you might need in the future. So communicating the vision is really important. We just need to be talking about it more. Orchestrating the material. What material will we use in conjunction with the Bible to assist others in growing in the Lord? Now, we had, these folks from Crossroads who came and did an excellent job of sharing, what their church does and how their church operates. They have these books that have been produced through their church. I was looking at the material the other day. Book 1 itself, just book 1 is 28 weeks. And that's just one book. You multiply that, and I can't remember,
Is it a year and a half? 18 months, a year and a half.
yeah, so it's like a year and a half, right? To go through all 4 books. Now, I'm saying if that's the direction we want to go, okay, that's fine. But there again, there needs to be, we have to look at how we're going to structure that, because obviously there's going to be weeks that we can't meet or people can't meet. How's that going to work? Is it going to be, a group of people that they're just going to stick with that all the way through till 18 weeks, 18 months, and then it's like, okay, now those folks are what we consider fully trained disciples, if we're going to call it that. But I think that's part of the discussion we need to have. Another thing that we used to have, and that this is something that we can incorporate fairly easily because of stuff that we have done before, are things like new believers class. So anybody who's a new Christian, starts there. And we cover some basic, general things about what does it mean to be a Christian and what's next, okay? So like a next steps, that's what it used to be called, next steps. It's like, okay, we talk about baptism, we talk about communion, we talk about, these different things. But that could be something like a 4 or 6 week class that just basic Christianity, basic church doctrine stuff. Now again, is somebody going to be fully, what this other church would consider fully trained? No. But that's a starting point. Maybe everybody starts there, gets familiar with all that, and then it becomes like a staggered. So it's like, okay, once this group has been through, let's just say phase 1, new believers. Now you all know what our church believes on these things, right? And then it's like, okay, the next time we offer that, one of you is going to lead that. Or a couple of you lead that with other people. And then it's staggered. So every 4 to 6 weeks, we have people who are moving through these classes. New disciples class. So that would be like what some people call 102. So you have a 101 class, which is just basic, things about Christianity. Then 102, you talk about some other deeper things, theology, eschatology, all these kind of things. Then, you move to a new partners class even. We not members, but, we call it partners. So it's like, what does it mean to be part of our church? Which is something like Karen and Marshall have been doing with their small group. They've been going through some of our doctrinal statement and things like that. But maybe that's something that we offer for all of our people to go through. Because there are a lot of people who come to our church, I guarantee you they don't know everything we believe or why we believe it. But that's because we don't really force people to know our doctrine or even really adhere to yes or consent to yes, I believe the same thing. However, if you're in leadership, you certainly should believe the same things we believe, right? And be in agreement with all the things that are on our website as far as our doctrinal statement. So let me stop there. These are just some ideas. What do you guys think about any of that? What are your thoughts on how we should orchestrate the material? Yes, Kurt.
Well, I believe that all of those on there are things that we might look at, but my concern is for us to get a core group of individuals who are moving towards discipleship and discipling others. And then they can be the ones who do the new believers class and the new partners class. But I think that since we're talking about discipleship, we need to address that first, foremost, and go at it actively.
I'm gonna disagree with my husband. I think the new believers class is essential because a lot of people, they don't know basics. And it's hard to teach them how to be a disciple when they don't know what a disciple is. and they don't know what it is to be a Christian. So I think if you're starting there, I'm not saying you have to go to each one of them, but a new believers class to me is very essential, because that way they know who they belong to.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have that basic knowledge.
I don't think there's a disagreement there. I think it's two different groups of people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
one's a new group, one's a,
Right. And
sort
I
of a
think
long
that it
group.
can be a both and. I think it can be, you know, there's a core group of, you know, maybe, let's just say older Christians, people who've been doing the walk with Jesus for a while, but would not maybe necessarily have been discipled. So we do have a group that's just intentionally focused on these things with the understanding that they are going to be disciple makers soon. I say soon, however long it's gonna take. But then for the new believers, we offer something like that to people who are new to the church or new to the faith, and that can be, you know, it can be you know, just like a 4-week class or something like that, to just say, hey, if you're new to the church or new to the faith, come to these classes so that you'll understand what our church is really about, and what does it really mean to follow Jesus, right, is ultimately the goal. But I think we can do both of those. Anybody else have any thoughts or comments about any of that?
I know you said you looked at the material that they provided, and is it something that could be condensed? And, because I believe that it needs to be structured to some extent for anybody who's either leading it or going through it. There needs to be some structure to it. So is the material that you have something that can be condensed down?
Yeah, and great question. As I think I shared this, I can't remember when I said it, but back in September, I was actually making notes on some things about, like, years ago, I used to do something called Ministry Academy. I used to do some things with all of our church on Wednesday nights at the other building, you know, and we would sit there and we would go through some things on theology. I had talks about, you know, God and Jesus and Holy Spirit and the Bible. I mean, I went through a lot of that kind of stuff. It's not that I don't have the material to do it. It's a matter of, yeah, how do we want to do it? So I think this material is great stuff, but it is, I mean, it's pretty intensive. We can probably consolidate some of that and cover some of those things, you know, in a couple sessions as opposed to, you know, once a week. I mean, literally these books, you have lessons every day, and that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying, like to Kirk's point, there's probably only a few who are really going to sit down and say, I'm going to, you know, do a lesson every day. I'm going to memorize a verse every week. I'm going to do this, this, and this, because that is a big requirement. It's not a bad requirement. It's just a big one. Okay, it's just a big commitment.
but that's impossible for me to do though.
Well, and yeah,
But,
and-
no, I'm all in,
yeah.
but every day, I got 2 kids, I got activities, I own 2 businesses. I mean, I'm putting in 12 plus hours at work. I mean, there's only 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
I mean, I can do 2-3 days a week, but 7, I mean, unless you're retired or not working, that's gonna be pretty hard for anybody.
You can be retired and not working and that be.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying y'all, I'm just saying, but like people are busy, so like an everyday thing, I guarantee you probably 95% of this room would say every day is probably,
It would be.
I'm not saying going over verses, but I'm saying like doing a whole study sheet every day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's asking a lot.
Then once you get behind, there's no way to catch back
Exactly.
up. And like if you get sick or something, you just, you know, miss a couple of days, and well, now what?
Yeah. Well, and again, I think, you know, obviously, there's grace. There's all kinds of things. And the discipleship program or whatever plan or whatever we're using doesn't have to be like a hard and fast. I think the goal is to, again, stay motivated, right? Don't quit. But if somebody's falling behind or whatever, the goal isn't to just say, oh, well, you're not doing it, right? It's not about just checking off the boxes. But the thing is, when you're doing a workbook, that is the challenge, right? You feel that guilt and that pressure to do something every day. And so I do think that we can find a way to modify some of this stuff. You know, I've preached on this a couple of times. Some of y'all are gonna remember it whenever I say it. Know, grow, show, and go.
Yeah, you did it like not
It's
too
the
long
same
ago.
thing. It's the same basic concept, right? Is to know God, grow in God, show God through your actions, conduct, and character, and then go on mission, make disciples. So, I mean, it's like, I've already done all that stuff, we can do it again, and we can condense it into, modules that would be maybe easier, or, I don't wanna say easier, but would be manageable, right? We can probably do that. It's just, again, I'm trying to find out what it is that we really need to do for our group, and for the ones who really wanna, dive into this. And even, busy people, but still serious, right? So
Yeah,
we
mean,
wanna find a way to make it work.
I mean, I'm all in.
Yeah.
I'm 100% in, but it's just,
Right.
like, every day for,
Mhm.
I don't even have an hour of free time every day, let alone
Yeah,
time for anything else, so.
yeah. Okay, other thoughts or concepts or questions?
I think when you have so many, like they talking about so many months and stuff like that, people gonna drop off. You can't even get people to come study to exercise class, come study to church, to come study to, we see it when we have things, even in Bible classes on Zoom or wherever. It's hard for people to keep a steady commitment.
Did Crossroads say, so this is like, quote unquote, what they've done, so on or whatever, I wasn't here.
It's Jesus, it's Jesus's
Yeah.
plan.
How many of their people, and they probably didn't divulge this information, actually stuck through 7 days a week, every single day, for 28 weeks?
I said every single
Kurt,
one.
do you remember, like, any?
Bull
No, I don't remember
S.
the numbers, but.
I'm just
You're
saying.
not allowed to serve at that church unless you went through the 18-month discipleship program.
Yeah, I think
Right.
they require it as a member of.
Yeah,
the
they do.
It's a requirement.
Yeah. It's a requirement to become a
To
member.
teach, yeah,
Yeah.
to become a member.
And
He
they,
did say
they
they
went
lost a lot of-
and they
from
have
They lost.
60
They got
to 3,000. Now, that's over 30 years.
Right.
But the thing is, we have to identify the folks who are going to be. If we say, get together once a week, that are gonna be committed to that. And then just go forward. The reality is, for example, like when we talk about our Bible study group has been pretty much the same for 5 years? 5 years. So there are committed people that attend our church, and some of them don't even attend New Vision,
Right.
but they're there every week unless sick, something comes up, but they're there. And, I think that what we need to figure out is what's the most accommodating and not be concerned with, well, folks are gonna drop out. Because if they're dropping out on this, then this isn't what they wanna do.
That's what you just said. People have to be committed, and
Right.
you have to set your priorities, and like, it is busy, it's hard to do. If we try to do their program, I don't know if I could do it, because it's just so much to do, and just the 18 months looming over you, for me, that's a lot. But we're not them.
I was about to say that,
We're
thank
not
you.
them. So if we could, like you said, I agree, we have to have a structure, but it doesn't have to be that intense to where you want people to do that workbook every day for 7 days a week for 18 months. That's just not, for me, that's just unrealistic. But we can minimize that
Yeah.
to fit our church and our goal. That's a guide for us. We don't have to do exactly what they're
Right.
doing.
Yeah, exactly. Susan?
Well, that's what, Katrina mentioned, even with commitments, we still need people, to be given grace because of sickness and overwhelm, which is what we're just
Yeah.
reiterating. So that's, I
Yes.
think that going through a class like that, even with that church, they had to have had people that got sick,
Yeah.
during that time, and I can't imagine them saying, no, because you were sick and you missed those months.
Yeah.
You're gonna be kicked out, or you can't be a member. I just, you would have an opportunity to fall in where you stopped, or where you need to make up.
Well, and that's why even like the staggered groups, if somebody was missing that, then they can just maybe jump into another group and just pick up there.
Right.
Okay. Ms. Penny?
Well, maybe you just answered my question. What about, when you start a group, and then what happens, 2 months down the road, and some new people come in, or some people that are already here decide they wanna do it? Do they have to wait till the first group is done, or is there gonna be staggered groups?
Yeah, well, and like I was saying, I think that it's important for us, back to Ms. Rose's point, is that if there are people who are coming into the church, they're brand new. I mean, we have some stipulations already, like they can't serve in any of our ministries until they've been at the church for 3 months anyway. That's a safety protocol. But when it comes to other things, like, I mean, because we've had this brought up before, where some people felt like, well, this person's teaching, but they're saying some things that I don't know if I agree with everything they're saying. And of course, we get all the material together for the teachers, but that doesn't mean that I know everything that person's going to say in the back, right? Or with the students even. And so this is why it is important for us to make sure that everybody who is part of our church agrees with our doctrinal statement, because then I can have peace of mind. It's like they're not going to say anything that I would question them about, right? And so taking people through like a new believers class or a new partners class, once they say, yes, I want to be part of New Vision Church, well, let's make sure that you understand what we believe, why we do what we do. And so that would be part of discipleship. It would just be a different segment of discipleship. The reason we're talking about this is because of 2 Timothy 2:2, right? He says, and what you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful people who will be competent to teach others as well. That Paul is telling Timothy, he's like, you've got to teach the things that you've learned, but you've got to teach these to other people, and entrusting them, right, that they're going to do the same thing. So the goal here isn't just for me or Kirk or the elders to sit down with other people and say, okay, I'm going to disciple you, and then it stops there. That's not the goal. The goal is that we're hoping that you're going to take it, and now it's like part of your responsibility to make sure you're passing that on to someone else.
It's your commitment.
Right,
Like
that's
Karen
part of your
said, it's like
commitment.
You've
right?
got to be committed. You really want to be in.
Now that could be, right? It could be with just your family, okay? But the idea would be that, okay, well, when your children are gone, right? Some of you are discipling your grandchildren, right, Miss Bessie? Right? You're discipling other people, but you're entrusting the same things that you've learned and you've been taught with other people. And again, there's classroom and there's conversations. And I think, both are important. And so motivating others. Let's talk about that for a minute. So it's our desire for all at New Vision to move from being consumers to contributors. And, the Sunday morning mentality a lot of times is come, feed me, let me go home and do life outside of church. And the thing about discipleship is, the thing about discipleship is, feed me so I can feed others. Teach me how to fish so that I can teach someone else how to fish.
That actually was said, I meant to say this before, but I was looking up what verse it was. That being fishers of men meant so much to Jesus that when he came back after the resurrection, like everybody only talks about the Matthew verse and the Matthew, Mark, and Luke verses, but in John, he actually comes back after the resurrection because they're going through the same thing, recreates the entire same thing again for them after his resurrection because they don't believe it's really him. And that's not spoke about enough, so he actually does that same thing twice in the Bible.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, here's the thing, is Jesus' message doesn't change.
Right, but he did it after the resurrection. He did it before, obviously,
Yeah.
which everybody talks about, but he did it after he came back. It was years after, it was a long time period after he came back, but he found Peter, and he still couldn't catch fish. He still couldn't do everything, and the same scene was redone all over again, just to prove to Peter that he was who he said he was.
Yeah, good point. And so, again, we have to do this over and over and over again. We got to repeat it. It doesn't just stop one time, The goal isn't that you wouldn't just make one disciple, but that you make many. Right? Our motivation. Hopefully this will motivate you. Only 3% of Americans meet the criteria as being discipled. So when we were talking about this a few moments ago, Kirk was talking about this some too, right? It's that a lot of people aren't discipled, and they don't know what it means to be discipled, And therefore, if you look over to the third box there, only 1/3 of Christians are actually discipling someone. And part of that is because they've never been disciples, they don't know that they're supposed to be making disciples. The middle box, about 39% of Christians are not engaged in discipleship at all. So when we think about our church, and again, I appreciate you guys being here tonight. I was extremely encouraged again a couple weeks ago on Saturday when you all were here. I think we had like 23 that were here that day. And when you look at the population of our church, I mean 23 out of,
Say 100 and,
let's yeah, I mean 75, that's a third.
there was 105 there today, but same
Okay,
difference.
105. So a fourth of our church showing up for saying, hey, we want to be disciple, we want to make disciples. I don't know if you're going to go anywhere and find a fourth of somebody's church, right, being that intense and intent on doing what Jesus called us to do. So I'm very encouraged. I hope you're very encouraged by it. When you look at some other motivation here,
Hey, can I ask a question about Crossroads real fast?
yeah. You might have to ask Crossroads because I don't know all the answers.
Well, but if we're gonna be doing a program, their program or a program similar, do their beliefs line up with ours? Does their doctrinal statement line up with ours? Or is this just another non-denominational church that is a mega church that we're following their philosophies?
Yeah,
No, I mean, you may not know, but
I
I'm
don't know that-
I'm asking, because I
I don't
mean,
know the complete answer to that.
because there's a lot of churches out there that claim to have great philosophies and have great teaching ability, but their mission statement and or doctrinal philosophy is not close to ours, that wouldn't be suitable for us because they don't believe what we believe.
Yeah.
Hence why we had an unnamed person come into our church and say some things that were not according to what our beliefs. I'm not knocking him. I mean, people in here know who he is. I'm not knocking him, but just things like that. I mean, are we gonna stay with our beliefs but do their program? Or does their beliefs match up with ours?
I don't know completely to say that their doctrinal statements are exactly like ours. I would say they're pretty similar.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
I'm asking.
But I would say, and I mean, because, you know, the thing is that you can still be similar, but you can still have people that might say things that don't sound right. But everything I've heard from Crossroads, and we went to the summit over there, we had them here, I didn't hear anything that I disagreed with. And I don't think, I mean, and I have some other people that I know that attend church over there, and so I would feel comfortable with them. I don't know that there's anything that they would.
I mean, that's fine. I wasn't there, so I'm just asking.
If you look at this here, this is from Barna, who does a lot of, you know, polling and studies. There are some really important things to notice here. If you see up here, nearly half of Christians struggle to find time with community with other Christians because they're too busy. So this is something that, you know, we've just been talking about a minute ago, is that people are very busy, okay? And it's hard to look at, okay, if you're wanting me to do a discipleship class or something, it might be difficult for some people to commit to that. 2 in 5 Christians agree that it's difficult to figure out how to balance spending time with their church community and non-Christians. This goes back to, it's like, well, it's really hard for our light to shine when all the light's in a lit place already. Okay? And if we're always saying, hey, you got to come to this class and you got to come and do this, where's the time for the light to be in the darkness? So it's tough because, you know, it's like, well, do we need another Bible study? You know, do we need another time to get together? And these are, again, it's important for us to encourage one another, to have gathering times together. But I think it's also important for us to be rubbing shoulders with people who are not in church, because they're the ones who need the light. They're the ones who need to see our conduct is different, our character is different. And if we never spend time with people who are outside church, then are we really going to win people to Christ? Okay? I'm not saying that you need to cut all your church activities, right? The Bible says don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together. So you don't forsake that, but I think you have to be careful with how you schedule things. 1 in 3 Christians is very willing to invest time in others to pass along what they've learned. So a third of us, and that would be an accurate statement, you know, a third of us showed up for the discipleship. So this is right on board, where it's saying, okay, we've got people who are willing to invest in others, and that's a great thing. we got to figure out how to do that. 58% of Christians spend uninterrupted time with God last week, at least a week, at least weekly. So that's a pretty good number. But I would say if you're just doing it weekly, that's not enough. It should be daily. That when we're talking about discipleship, we should have daily time with God. We cannot expect to make disciples if you're only getting time with God once a week on Sundays. Now, I know some of you are getting cold right now, and I adjusted that air, so.
Man, it feels good in
I
here.
didn't adjust it down, I adjusted it up.
It
so-
feels good in here.
It's getting cold.
It's perfect.
It feels good in here.
On this side, 62% of Christians, 62% of Christians who are uninterested in disciple making say it sounds like too big a time commitment. Okay, so this is something for us to be sensitive to think about. That it's like, okay, again, time matters, and we do need to be sensitive to time. But on the other hand, we also need to understand that when Jesus, at the pinnacle of his ministry, had thousands of people following him, he said the hardest things, and most of the people went home. And he was okay with that. And so we've got to be okay if everybody's not jumping on board saying, yeah, I want to make that kind of commitment. Because it is. It's a commitment. Jesus said, take up your cross, die to yourself, and follow me.
Daily.
Now listen, daily. Now listen. There is no framework of mind that I'm going to willingly choose to say, I want to get up at, 5 o'clock to meet with some of y'all that have discipleship. But if that's the only time you got, I'm going to do it. So it's like, I'm willing to do whatever we need to do. But there again, there's going to be a cost. There's opportunity cost in everything. Okay? So it's like, what do we really want? If we want to make this, now, if we're going to do that at 5 o'clock, I don't want it to go on for years. We can do it for a while. All right? But we are going to be on the express mode to discipleship. Okay?
I'll just call you when I leave the house at 2 a.m. How about that?
Okay? But that's the thing. It's like, and listen, there's these businessmen who tell these stories all the time. Oh yeah, we get up at 5 a.m. and go to breakfast and do all this. Listen, there are people who get up and go, don't have a problem going fishing at 5 a.m. Right?
That's right.
Don't let me call it out. But,
I'm late getting in the woods just as much as I'm late to church, so I'm gonna point that out.
so,
I've been late in my stand many times.
but the
Hey, at
thing
least
is
you're
this,
consistent,
Is
Richard.
that it's we're going to be committed to whatever we want to be committed to. Okay, and so it's like if time is the issue, okay, we got to prioritize where our time's going to be. And again, I can understand we can have a ton of good things that we're doing, and everything can't be first place. But there can be ways we can adjust some things so that we can make it work. I'm willing to bend however I need to bend. I think there are other people who are willing to bend. So it's like, take advantage of that. I've said this a couple weeks ago to somebody. I've said it to some other people before. I feel like I'm a spiritual Gumby sometimes. I'm being pulled this way, being pulled that way, bending this way. But you might have to do that too, if you really want to make disciples. 43% of potential disciple makers who don't have the right materials said they want brief Bible studies.
What is brief?
Brief would be like TED Talks, 20 minutes or less. In fact, a lot of pastors, and I really try to, there was a time when I was like, hour, 15-minute service, that's it, we can be done. But it really is hard if you're going to do a good job at worship and preaching and whatever to get it done in less than an hour and a half. But when it comes to the preaching, most churches now, they try to get things, their sermons done in under 40 minutes.
Yep.
So, and that would even be considered long for some people. And that's because we have generations now who are so used to shorts. So used to, their attention span is just really short. And unless you're doing something that's changing it up, like this morning, try to do some different kinds of elements to keep people engaged, it's really going to be hard sometimes to keep people's attention. 1 in 4 potential disciple makers if they could build their own discipleship resource, Pavers, quick lessons. So again, fast isn't always the answer. Okay, and this is where we've kind of gotten into this microwave society. We cannot microwave disciples. It is a process, and it takes time. Maturity takes time. To have a baby, it's 9 months. Okay, so when we think about, and then, I mean, some of y'all, you still trying to raise your children, and they're 35, right? Maturity, right? It takes time. So for us, when we think about disciple making and people who want to be disciples, we've got to encourage them and say, listen, you ain't got it yet, but I'm going to help you get there. But I'm going to be committed to a lifelong process. Okay, discipleship is a lifelong process. The other half of the circle there, I couldn't get it all in to where you could read it. 1 in 3 Christians who are interested in disciple making assumes it will be a challenge to prioritize it alongside all the other things they're juggling. Again, we're all busy. And so we have to be upfront to say there is going to be a commitment, there is going to be a cost here, you're going to have to be willing to make some adjustments. 7% of Christians who aren't in a discipleship relationship attribute it to time commitment. So as much as we think they're going to say it's a time commitment, only 7% say that's the problem. Okay? So that's an encouraging fact. That it's real. The biggest issue, and I don't know if it's on here, let's see. The biggest issue is not time. The biggest issue is the invitation.
That wasn't on
Yeah, it's not on there. But the biggest issue is that nobody's ever asked them to be discipled. Okay? And so that's kind of where it is. It's kind of like, okay, if people really want it, sometimes they may feel inhibited to ask. And that's where it's like, if we're building some on-ramps, okay, we're using things like new believers class, or we're using new partners class, and then in family groups or whatever, we're saying, hey, are you being discipled? Would you like to be discipled? Okay, it's posing that question. And just saying, hey, are you in that kind of relationship with someone? Are you part of a group where you're growing like this? That invitation could change everything. Okay? So we can't just assume that people understand that that's what they need to do. They need to be discipled. Let me move on here. So motivating others. We want all who attend to become those who contend for the faith. All right, that we want people to move from just, again, being consumers at church to being contributors. We want people who are just not just being attenders, but being people who can actually contend for the faith. That they know what they believe, why they believe it, and they're able to make other disciples. Oh, I gotta come back here.
About 3 feet.
There.
Yeah, right there, you're good.
They're also having trouble hearing you over there, so I thought maybe moving closer.
Oh, okay. Philippians 1:27. He says, only conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come and see you or whether I remain absent, I should hear that you are standing firm in one spirit with one mind, by contending side by side for the faith of the gospel. That Paul is saying this, that it is really important that we develop other people who can fight for the faith, who are going to stand for the faith. And that we have that confidence because we spent time with them. Because we've invested in them to say, hey, I know what you know what you know, so don't be afraid to fight for what you know. 1 Peter 3:15. But set Christ apart as Lord in your hearts, and always be ready to give an answer to anyone who asks about the hope you possess. So Peter is telling the readers of his letter, he's saying it's really important for you to know why you believe what you believe, and being able to give an answer. A lot of people today, the answer is, I don't know, ask my pastor. Right? I don't know, ask somebody else. Right? And we need more people who can give good, solid answers, biblical answers on why they believe what they believe. Okay, so let me stop there. Any thoughts or questions about this? Motivating others? The Bible gives us example after example on disciples and people who made disciples. Paul, right? Disciple people like Timothy and Titus. Jesus obviously had his 12 that he discipled. There were other people who were making disciples, and that's why the church even made it, right? Is because those 12 went on and they did what they were supposed to do. They discipled others. So finally, enculturate.
Marshall made a point that, it took Jesus 3 years, and we're complaining about 18 months.
Yeah. Well,
It's a commitment thing again.
yeah. And it was a different life, too.
Yes, true.
So enculturate. We want everyone to understand the vision and work toward that vision becoming a reality. When we think about any business, these businesses have their brand. Their people know that business. They know the motto. They know how things work. They know why it works. They know about their competition. I mean, they know everything, right? If they're going to be productive and help that business succeed, then it doesn't matter who you are in the company. You better know something about the company. The same thing is true for the church. Even more importantly, right? We shouldn't just be coming to church and saying, well, I don't really know a whole lot. You can go talk to him or her. No, we should know. And this is why it was frustrating to me, you know, in all these years, people are like, well, we don't know who the elders are and the deacons. My goodness, how many times have we announced it? Right? Now we have a piece of paper up, and thankfully I haven't heard anybody ask me lately who they are. But I think part of that is too because, well, we've tried to do everything within our ability for people to know who these people are. Now, to some degree, that's on them. But were we doing all that we could do to make sure everybody knew? Well, maybe not. That's why that piece of paper now is hung up in several places. People can see it. Okay? So the same thing might be true for us, is that maybe certain people don't know everything because the people they're talking to don't know enough. That even, you know, and this is why it's important for us in leadership especially. We've all got to be on the same page. We all need to know what we believe, why we believe it. We all need to be there. And to Kirk's point is that we've got to have a core group of these people. It really should start with our deacons and elders, staff. It should all start there. I mean, it's trickle down. This is a trickle down, you know, leadership. But it's like everybody's got to be on the same page. And those of you who are volunteering, and many of you volunteer in different places, whether it's, you know, in Kid Nation or Little K or nursery, whatever it is, there are going to be people that they're going to talk to you while they're picking up their kid. They might ask you a question, and you need to know the answer. And so that's part of this discipleship. So enculturating this and making sure that everybody's on the same page is going to be important. Yes.
But I mean, that's also comes down to, like, if you don't necessarily know the answer to that specific question, hold on 1 second and let me go get that answer for you.
Yeah.
It's also part of being a leader is let me go find that answer for you.
True.
As a volunteer or a staff member. Okay, I don't know that exact, you know, date or time or, you know, but let me go find that for you.
Sure. Yep. Exactly. I just lost my. In Acts chapter 1:8, another very familiar verse when it comes to Jesus sending out his disciples. But he said, "You will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, all Judea, Samaria, and the farthest parts of the earth." So Jesus was saying this: you enculturate first at home. He said, this starts in Jerusalem. For us, this starts at New Vision. Okay? For us, this starts with leadership. For us, this starts with people who are volunteering. For us, this starts with the people who are people of influence. This starts with people who are serving. Okay? This is where it starts. This is why we're having this conversation. Because we do need to be looking at what kind of commitment can you make. Be thinking and praying about that. We're not going to make a decision today. But in a couple of weeks, we'll be starting something, okay? And I'm going to be working on consolidating this material. I've already started working on all that. But we do need to be looking at, and you need to be looking at, okay, where is it, God, that I need to, what kind of commitment can I make? Because here's the thing, don't make a commitment that you cannot keep. All right? That's biblical. Okay, Ecclesiastes says don't make a promise that you can't keep, right? But again, it's not to say that you're gonna be perfect, we are gonna make mistakes, okay? We're all gonna have times where we're sick, or something comes up, and, we can make adjustments, but the intention needs to be there, that I intend to keep this promise, okay? So, when we think about enculturation, right, it's gotta start with the DNA of the church, people who are in leadership, volunteers, leaders of the church. It's going to start there in Jerusalem, and then eventually it's going to spread out, and that's how it happened in Jesus' day with his disciples. It started in one place and it spread, and that's how it started with Crossroads. I mean, it started there, it's spread out. They have churches all over the place. But I did think it's really interesting that Stan shared this with us the other day, and he said, there's, I can't remember if it was maybe 3 churches that he knows of that they would consider disciple-making churches. Do you remember if that number was right?
I think it was 3 or 4.
Yeah. So it was a very few. When you think of all the churches that there are, that out of all those churches, they only know of maybe 3 or 4 that would be considered disciple-making churches. And I guess, that's maybe following the strict criteria, which would be hard for maybe all these churches to do. Again, we're not trying to measure ourselves by them, but I do think it is important for us to be challenged by them, okay? And the challenge is there, is that if they're able to make disciples with a 3,000 member church, well, surely we can do it with 100, okay? Surely we can do it with 50. So, it's not even, surely Jesus changed the whole world with 12, okay? So it's not about the number, it's about doing what Jesus said to do. And I know that we want to be a Bible-believing church. I know that we have made efforts to do all that we can do to be a Bible-formed church. But part of that is making and being intentional about making disciples. Yes, Ms. Penny?
Stan said that they started this discipleship, he selected 8 people as a small core group that went through this 18 months and became disciples.
But I think, but that was Stan after he had been through a discipleship with Ken.
Right.
Right. So Ken is the main pastor at Crossroads, and Ken discipled Stan, and they have other groups that meet outside of what Stan's group is doing. But starting with a group of 8, right? It can make a difference. So I want you guys to be thinking and praying about, what kind of commitment you think you could make. And when I'll lay out some of these different kind of classes that we were talking about earlier here with new believers, partners, and disciples. We'll kind of give a sketch of an outline of what maybe that can look like. And then I'll submit it to you guys. We'll look at collectively, do we think this is workable? One thing I was looking at is that if we start this, let's just say that we start it at the end of March. From the end of March, the last Sunday in March, to the end of the year is 40 weeks. Of course, when I counted up 40, I'm like, 40. Okay. But I'm like, okay, so if we focused from now to the end of the year, 40 weeks, what would that look like? And of course, there would be some weeks there that we would miss because of just, holidays or whatever. But still, I'm like, okay, if we start at the end of March and we go to the end of the year, that's a 40-week period. That if we intentionally, over these next 40 weeks, just say, our intention is to invest in as many people to be disciples, help them get prepared so that next year, at least if we start a staggered group, okay, and all those people who go through these 40 weeks, well, then you move on to whatever the next level of whatever it is, okay, of being more trained, okay, in other things like apologetics or whatever. And look, we've got kids who are going to school now who are dealing with things like on creation and trans issues. I mean, all these kind of things that don't get talked about in church, okay? But they need to know, how do I deal with this? How do I handle when my teachers are telling me these things, right? That I need to have a biblical answer. Well, these are things that we've got to be able to help them address. And that's not gonna happen if we're not talking about serious issues.
I'm already doing that now.
Yeah.
I've been doing that.
So it's
I got a kid
important
in
for
high
us
school.
to be looking at, okay, how do we help everyone else get to a place where they can do that too? Okay? So it's, and even if you don't, I mean, you're doing it because you have kids.
I have a kid in high school.
Right.
Trust me, I know.
Yeah, but everybody's not in that boat.
No,
yet.
I know.
But the thing is, they may be coming across some people who are. This is why I'm offering a parenting, seminar in a couple weeks. Is because that's another thing I have wanted to do, and it's just like, man, but it's like, no, this has got to happen. It's going to happen. I am tired of saying, no, I'm gonna wait. No, it's going to happen. This year, things are gonna happen, okay? I'm done for waiting. So, things are gonna happen, and whether people come or not, I am not gonna have somebody say, well, my church didn't offer it, my church didn't do it. No, this church's gonna do it. And you can come or not come. But it ain't gonna be because somebody's saying, oh, we didn't offer it. No, it's gonna happen. So, I'm just saying this, that we've got to be intentional. Our words for the year, and Kurt brought this up at the Haven, I appreciate that so much, right? Is that it's like, I've been trying to get y'all ready. We talked about that. Trying to stretch you. Trying to, right? And every year, God's giving me these words. And I don't think they're just out of the blue. I've looked at everything, and it's like these words just kind of all line up. And so last year was multiply. Well, this year, we're going to multiply with excellence. And so that means that everybody's got to be ready, right? Not to just circle back and say we're going to do that word again, but it's like, no, you multiply, you keep multiplying. That's the goal. You keep multiplying. All right. Any thoughts or questions? We're at an hour here. I want to close things up if there's nothing else that we need to discuss or say.
Yeah, I'm not proposing that the program or the material be watered down, but if we start this disciple class like in phases, I think it'd be good if that first phase or initial phase may be a 4-week, 5-week, 6-week period that has a lot of grace where people, if they fall behind, they can catch back up. And I think it's important to let people initially to feel good about themselves, to make at least the first phase and get it done, feel good about themselves, so they have motivation to go to the next phase. That's my only.
Okay. Thanks.
Katrina mentioned well-trained to be able to be able to well-train. So in order, to be able to be well-trained gives you confidence to be able to well-train others. And so,
Well, I was thinking about this the other day, and again, I like words, and it was like, the Lord was like, if they are well-fed, they'll be well-led. And I feel like if you're well-led, you'll be well-fed, and then you being well-fed, right, you're gonna help lead others in the same way, right?
that wasn't Katrina, that was Marshall or Karen. I mean, they're just popping up, and I'm not looking at
That's okay. So, all right, was this helpful?
Yeah.
Okay. So, again, we start by talking about it. We start by keeping talking about it, encouraging other people, letting them know that discipleship, right, is coming. We want people to be discipled. People need to be discipled if the church is going to continue, okay? We don't want anything to end with us. We don't want anything to end with us. So it doesn't stop with this generation. It doesn't stop with me. It doesn't stop with you. Okay? We're going to do all that we can do to make sure this keeps going. Right? Okay, let's pray. We'll get out of here. God, thank you so much for this evening. Thank you for everyone who's here and for their desire, God, to help us be a disciple-making church. Lord, this is your vision. It is your intention for us to be people who are making disciples, who will make disciples of others. And God, that starts with us first, submitting ourselves to you, making sure that we're hearing your voice, God, that we're doing what you've called and created each one of us to do. Lord, that you would help us also. Give us the eyes to see those around us, Lord, who, through some encouragement, through some motivation, would also step into that kind of relationship with you, Lord, so that they might too go and make disciples of all nations. Lord, help us to reflect on these things. God, give us direction, peace, clarity on all the things that you would have us to do. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
What was that on Facebook or YouTube?
YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you soon.